Welcome to Beyond the Clef. I am here with Bryan Christian, the director of bands from Vista Ridge, and we are going to be talking today about what it takes to win a state marching band championship, going for 16 years building a program and being one of the best.
Beyond the Clef is presented by Director's Choice.
Well, Bryan, thank you so much for joining us, and of course, we have to mention that you got a wing out. What happened there? What's going on?
The embarrassing elephant in the room. I was one of the truck drivers for our percussion ensembles to go to PASIC in Indianapolis right before Thanksgiving, and had this great idea trying to meet them at a restaurant from our hotel that we'd hop on a scooter and jump over there real quick.
No.
And I've done that 100 times probably, but this scooter didn't have a brake. It was broken.
Oh my
and
gosh.
I didn't know it until I needed to stop.
Right.
And so I had to bail out, and I tore my bicep tendon and had to have that reattached 2 weeks ago, and
Oh my
bone
God.
spur shaved off. So
Wow. I'm glad that you didn't
Kill
at least
myself?
just that. Yeah, I'm glad it wasn't something worse than that. That could have been bad.
me too.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I know someone else who had the same thing, and those things are getting dangerous. I just took one to lunch and back, and
Yep.
and they can get kind of scary.
They're fun. They're a blast and very practical, but I'm not sure that the world's ready for them quite yet. But it's going to make for an interesting spring for sure.
Right. And doing a little bit of this is going to be hard.
That's correct.
Well,
right now it's left-handed.
When you're not out riding limes, your day job is, of course, director of bands at Vista Ridge, and you just had a really great last fall, didn't you? State marching band champion?
Pretty amazing, surreal experience. Yes, sir.
Wow.
Fantastic.
Wow. So what was that like for you and the kids?
Honestly, it's hard to put into words. We've been in the mix for a while. We've been competitive, but we've always been kind of clawing at the top. And some of our dear friends and sister schools, Leander, Cedar Park, Vandegrift, we've kind of been chasing them at times and looking up to them. And of course, the big dogs of Flower Mound and Marcus and Woodlands and some of those guys, and just have so much respect for them. And for this to have happened, it seems rather suddenly. It really took us back, and it was thrilling, of course, but it was also humbling because really all of the bands that were there that day, just amazing. And of course, there's some bands that get left home that are equally as amazing, and then the finals bands, holy cow! It's just to be in the mix is fantastic. So we told our kids and our parents afterwards in the celebration, we have to be careful. Nobody worked harder than we did. We didn't work harder than anybody else did. Everybody's show is awesome, and everyone's proud of their own production for sure. Nobody beats anybody in our activity, so it's rather interesting. And we had to combat some of the phrases that are well-meaning, but not accurate. All their work finally paid off. Well, that's not the payoff. For us, if we say that the payoff in our activity is the work ethic and the teamwork and the time management and the problem solving, if we say that when we don't win, then we have to continue to say that when it does go our way. So
That's a good philosophy.
And to just keep giving props to our predecessors. The alumni who worked hard to get us to where we are. We're not starting from square one. We've had a tradition of excellence, and so to say that that finally paid off would diminish what they had done in the past. So we were very careful with the way we tried to say our words and present that, but super excited and just thrilled to be there and truly humbled on the field. After the announcement was made and we broke ranks, the first people to come over and congratulate me were Brent and Jana from Flower Mound and Jarrett and Alan from CTJ, and I know my friend Mike Howard at Vandegrift would have been there, except he was on the way other side of the field, and as soon as they could, they were over there too. And just the people in the activity are so supportive of each other. It's really pretty amazing. I know I have a new staff member, Reed Atkinson, Associate Director of Bands, and he's really in charge of our marching band. I sort of am along for the ride, but he's from outside of Texas, and one of the comments that he's made in this journey is that, wow, everybody is so helpful of each other. They're just supportive, and they give away their secrets. And that's a long time Texas tradition that we're very proud of, I think. So, it's a really neat activity and a pretty awesome experience.
So how long have you been at Vista Ridge?
This is our 16th year. I opened the school in 2003.
Okay.
And we opened with 35 freshmen. 5 of them were color guard members, and 5 of them were oboe players. So that was an interesting year. We almost made a 1 in marching that year, and we had a 1-2-2.
I went to Reagan High School, and my freshman year was the year it opened.
Okay.
And I do have a video of the first ever Reagan High School marching show, and it's not something that I think I remember Mark Chambers saying, "Do not ever give this to anybody."
Yes.
It was a fun time, but it was a little bitty.
I wrote the drill that year, and I was the drum major that year, if that tells you anything.
Oh, wow.
So yes, we've come a long way.
You've grown a lot. Yeah. So 16 years now. You've been there.
Years.
Okay, so let's delve into that. I also started my program. I opened it 8 years ago, my middle school program. What has the journey been like, and how have you built a program from scratch, literally scratch, to a state marching band champion in 16 years? What does that look like? I'm sure there's been some ups and downs.
Well, sure. It helps to be in such a supportive environment. Leander ISD is a great place to do band in, of course. Not just supported financially, but community, administration, super supportive. And so I don't feel like I can take credit for a lot of the success or the growth that has come across. But if there was one thing that I'm most proud of, it's the culture that we've built since then, and again, going back to the helping each other and to being friends, not just work colleagues, but friends. We have great relationships with our choir directors, our drama teachers, our dance teachers, and with other teachers on the campus. To me, relationships are the first and foremost priority. And I just use music as a vehicle to develop those relationships. And of course, I love music, and our kids do as well. The other part that is super great is the fact that I have such great feeders. Again, LISD has a lot of fantastic middle school band programs, but when Henry Middle School and Stiles Middle School are feeding you, you get some great players. So,
Robert Herring has been on this program before, and
yes.
And coming up soon, we're actually going to have Darcy Williams.
Okay, fantastic.
So she's going to be on tomorrow. Of course, recording this episode, it'll be a couple weeks from this episode, but really excited to have her on.
Great teachers.
Yeah, they're both really great. So now take me through a year, let's say November to November, including a state marching band championship. What does a year look like for you? Or does it start in November? Does it start before that planning?
Well, that's interesting. This time, a year ago, we were in a little bit of a fix. We lost a director in October, and so I took on more responsibilities. And we probably started our process in December with our design team, trying to come up with ideas, just putting things out there. And we probably had 3 or 4 things, on a notepad to consider, and then we came back in January and really started diving into it.
What does that design process look like? If we could just hone in on that, who's involved, and how do you come up with the show?
Well, that is not my forte, honestly. Yeah. I feel like I can teach pretty well, but I'm not creative. So I've always kind of been an outlier looking in. I've always kind of jokingly said I have veto power.
Yeah.
But did have a little bit of input on this, but we have a great music arranger, drill writer, program consultant, percussion arranger, sound designer, all those people that have input. And of course my percussion instructor, Hector Heel, is part of that process. At that time, one of my assistants was Dustin Tharp, who's now at Vandergrift High School, and he was part of that process. But
he did his practicum at my school.
Oh, is that? Yeah, that's Texas Tech guy.
Yep.
But we try to get in as much of us in a room and the others on a conference call and just start throwing out ideas and whatnot. And again, most of that comes from outside. The wealth of knowledge of music, literature, and ideas for production are just pretty crazy, and I'm just fascinated to watch that process happen. But I sort of just facilitate it. Let's
Right.
get us together and guide it through. But
You're the CEO.
I guess that's a good way to say it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's how I feel too. Sometimes I would love to get in and teach the classroom, but I'm managing and moving around the pieces. So I stopped you at the design process. Now take me after that. So now you've started to get the design process going. You say this is about December, January?
Yes, in January it starts taking shape, and we follow up probably monthly. We probably had our music by mid-April, maybe May. We do a May music camp with our incoming 8th graders and our returning veterans, and it's usually 2, maybe 3 afternoons of rehearsal, and then we put on a performance of the first movement or something like that for the parents. And it's amazing how much growth happens in those short few days. And so that's kind of our timeline as far as getting music to us. And then once we see who actually is in band, in the summer, and schedules are starting to be created, then our drill starts getting written over the summer. And usually by the time our summer band starts, we have at least the first movement, sometimes into the second. So that's sort of how that developed. Now, it is interesting, especially this year, that there were a couple of ideas that we had intended on using in the early part of the process that just never really came to fruition. They never developed. Our show title was Lost and Found, and we were going to have Lost and Found boxes. Every band hall probably has a Lost and Found of some sort. And we were going to be pulling clothes and tennis shoes and marching shoes out, and I found something. That idea never was really developed. It never came to fruition. The key to unlock a treasure chest, because we were going to find a treasure or something. We actually had a bunch of keys made by a parent, and our color guard was spinning keys, and then we realized we're not tying it into the show in any other way. So we nixed the keys.
So you feel like you've been flexible enough to be able to take that out when you need to?
Absolutely. And in fact, with the keys, we took that out, and I that day made a prototype of the needle and asked our color guard, is this close? We had like 3 different things. Is better length, width, what would you like? And then we gave it to a parent and said, okay, duplicate this 20 times or whatever. And it tied into our needles that were on the compasses, and so we had some happy accidents that were pretty beneficial to us. So I think being flexible is the key. Something that I've learned, especially this year, but maybe especially over the last 4 or 5 years, is that we don't have to be married to the score. I've always felt like we have this wonderful arranger, Ryan George, who he arranges for Boston Crusaders and many other wonderful organizations, and he does great work. And to me, I don't want to mess with that. It's like, this is awesome, but when it gets on the field and you have some staging issues, things have to be changed. We have to cut and edit, and I think what probably did that to me, or what made it clear to me, is when Ryan was at one of our clinics a few years ago, and he just started taking things out and even on site maybe putting it in different voices and just playing with the arrangement. And I was like, well, man, if he can do that, then I think that gives us the freedom to make those same kinds of choices. And Ryan just lives down the street from us and has a child at Henry Middle School in the band program, and he'll be a band parent next year. So,
oh, great.
So that's kind of neat to have him right there, a wonderful resource. So, being flexible and being willing to take risks and make changes to either fix problems or just to create a moment has been very key to the success for this year especially.
So what does your rehearsal schedule look like during a regular week of marching band?
We schedule 7 to 7.5 hours a week outside of school. We split.
It'd be really interesting if you said, "Oh yeah, we have 9 hours of rehearsal."
That would be interesting. I'm sure that Brad Kent might have something to say about that, along with a lot of other colleagues.
You'd have people screaming at the screen.
We split our winds and percussion and guard. Our percussion and guard rehearse in the evening on Monday. Our winds rehearse in the evening on Tuesday, generally, and we come together on Wednesday for a little shorter rehearsal and then a longer rehearsal together on Thursdays. And
when you say in the evening, do you literally mean
no,
evening, like
after school.
After school, okay.
We go like 4:05 to 6:45.
Right.
Except for on that Wednesday, we go to 6:15. We still have some kids and church members, know, that do that. So try to keep that free, but we don't do anything probably much different than anybody else.
Sure. So how do you plan for those rehearsals?
Well, that's what Reed does so well. Reed Atkinson, the Associate Director of Bands, and he's in our marching program, runs our marching program. We know in advance where we want to be by each weekend, each game, each contest, and so we kind of back plan from there, knowing, how many sets or what moments that we want to learn or what do we want to produce. Sometimes you wait a little bit longer to produce it. Sometimes because you don't have any drill, you go ahead and produce it, now while you use your time wisely. And this year with the rain, oh my goodness, who didn't have, 5 or 6 or 10 rehearsals canceled, or not canceled, but indoors.
Right.
So, you roll with the punches and you try to make the best use of your time and whatnot. But Reed plans our rehearsals. Depends on where we are in the year about are we learning or are we cleaning or are we producing a moment with choreography or restaging or something like that. But he does most of that, and we have weekly staff meetings every Monday morning to make sure we're all on the same page and make sure our color guard knows where we're going to be when they join us on Wednesday and Thursday, make sure our percussion are doing the same things. So, but they kind of are autonomous on their rehearsals and what they need to get done, just as long as when we're together, we're all on the same page.
So when you're doing a full rehearsal, percussion, guard, everything, everybody has the plan and they're going through,
yes.
like minute by minute. How do you structure an actual plan?
Maybe not minute by minute, but definitely chunk of time,
yeah.
Groups of minutes for sure. Reed will send everyone, including our techs, a very detailed schedule. These 20 minutes will be warm up. These next 25 minutes will be the first 8 sets, or sometimes we split. And Zach will take. Zach Santos is our first-year teacher, new teacher right out of UT. Has marched. Probably has 3 years of DCI marching experience. Great marching guy, and he did a whole lot of our choreography. And maybe he'll take the brass and I'll take the woodwinds, or maybe he takes all the winds and does a choreography moment while percussion is rehearsing and guard is rehearsing. And sometimes we're just real flexible in how we're going to divide the time, but that is 90% of the time planned out, very detailed ahead of time.
Okay, and then how does that work when full group is there? You say the associate director is running the rehearsal. What is everybody else doing at that time?
Well, I love being a tech. It's a lot of the time I'm on the field just being like another assistant band director. I love to get up on the tower sometimes, but I think too many people on the tower can get confusing. And sometimes my percussion instructor, Hector, needs to be on the tower. Sometimes he's on the field with the battery or with the front ensemble. Or we have a front ensemble tech. Our color guard instructor will be up and down depending on the moment. But usually Reed is in the tower, and Zach and I take a side of the field. Sometimes it's a quadrant. We have marching techs that maybe take a quadrant, and we're just putting out fires and helping instruct, helping guide, making suggestions. Reed's really good at giving us all input time. We can say, hey, we need 2 minutes, or can we take this back to such and such and get a few reps on that? We had some trouble over here, and Reed's great about that.
Great. So, especially you being at Vista Ridge for 16 years, do you feel like the competition for marching band, from the old 5A days to now the 6A days, do you feel like it's gotten more fierce, more tough? It's harder? Because sometimes when I go to the state marching band, last place and first place are just fantastic.
Well, yes and no. I think in general our activity has just blossomed to an incredible point, and I wish I could foretell the future, because it's hard to believe it can get much better, but I know it will. the creativity and the resources. It's pretty amazing. And same thing that we talked about earlier. The bands at the state marching contest, crazy. The bands at the DCI finals, it's just like, or the corps. It's like, what else can they do? How much further can this go? So in that way, yes, the activity has improved. I think teaching, it just keeps getting better and better and better. I don't know that any teachers now are any better than they were 30 years ago,
Sure.
But the art of teaching and the science of it has developed, and we've learned tricks and shortcuts and things that people have been willing to share. And so that in itself has probably improved the activity. As far as competition being fierce, maybe there are more groups that are doing it at the highest level. That could be possible. What I will say is that it's really hard to think of it as competition, because I tell my kids it's like art. Who's to say Van Gogh, Picasso, Rembrandt, who's better?
Right.
It's so subjective, and I won't get into the judging thing. I don't have any complaints, about the system. It is what it is. We're trying to objectify something so subjective,
Right.
and put points to an art. In fact, I told our parents and kids in our celebration, our medaling ceremony afterwards, that we don't score points like sports do. We're awarded points for what people see as achievement of excellence,
Right.
and that's different. You don't, when you think about it, it's really hard to think of this in a competitive way. And my hat's off to all of the groups that are continually, the dynasties that are continually in the state marching finals and the finals at BOA San Antonio. It's like, man, they're doing it well for a long time. They're doing it right. So it's pretty incredible just trying to keep up with them,
You mentioned such a subjective thing that we're judging. So, and I'll ask you to take yourself out of this year. Let's say 2 years ago, 4 or 6 years ago. What do you think the difference is between first and second?
Oh.
And I don't want to call anybody out, but it just seems like it's so tough up there at the top. What do you think makes that first place happen?
Boy, if I knew that, I could make a lot of money, I'm sure. I'll tell you what someone told me just yesterday, who is a band director. She had seen us several times over this season, and she said that performance especially just was clicking. And honestly, I don't know that our staff or our kids thought it was our best performance, but the connection that was made to the audience at the right time. I mean, we just peaked at the right time. And, the kids have to remember, you may have a great show, but you have to perform it. You have to play with integrity. You have to move with integrity. You have to do your choreography with integrity and really sell what you're doing. And so sometimes that's it. I couldn't tell you what the difference between first and second place is, but, maybe some of the differences might be in that in any given contest. I thought you were going to say, what's the difference for Vista Ridge? What made it better this year? And I would say that over the last 5 to 10 years, we've just been trying to figure out this BOA thing and this coordination thing and communicating with the audience. And I think that's what we've gotten better at. Not that we have mastered it at all, but just the coordination from the concept, inception to the finished product, and being flexible like we've already talked about, and watching that whole show develop into fruition. The coordination is incredible. And I think of all the things that the DCI course do, and I think of the minds that were working way in advance to see the finished product. I don't know how many of us band directors would say we really saw the finished product when we started. It just, what we end up with is just sometimes amazes us. So I don't know what the difference would be, but I'm glad I wasn't making the decisions.
Yeah, I bet. So you've now, although marching band is only a couple months of the year,
Mm-hmm.
It's not the whole year. How do you transfer what you're doing and that level of excellence into a concert setting?
That's a great question, and this has been my answer for a long, long time. Our concert setting is what makes our marching band, as great as it is.
Okay.
Again, our middle schools are teaching fantastic fundamentals, fantastic characteristic sounds, musicianship. They love to play their instruments, so it's not hard to convince kids that this is pretty cool. The level of literature that we play throughout our program is pretty amazing, and the standard of excellence is what it is. All of our bands, our top 2 bands have never received anything but a first division on the stage or in sight reading since inception, and our non-varsity 3rd and 4th bands almost always first divisions, and I couldn't tell you the record right now, but it's pretty consistent. So maintaining that kind of a standard in that, it makes it easily applicable to the standards that we hold in marching season. And actually, marching season's a little easier because kids buy in so easily, so well. It's very visual, and so it's easier for people to see the standard, whereas not everybody knows the musical standard necessarily.
It's also easier because the parents are seeing it once a week at least.
Yes, very true.
That was something when I moved from high school to middle school. It was more sad because I don't get to see the parents as much, or they see that product a couple times throughout the year,
right.
A handful of times. Mm-hmm. So, well, where do you see marching band going in the next decade?
Again, it's what are we going to do next? I expect to see some trumpet players playing a scale while cartwheeling or something. It's crazy what we're asking kids to do, and they keep finding ways to do it. I don't know who the real innovators are, but you just don't know how much more. What else can it go? I will say this: it saddens me a little bit how much money we have to spend on marching band just to be in the mix, not to win, but to be in the mix. And I know that the marching band beast is sort of what feeds us. It's what gets administrative support and parental support, and a lot of what kids buy into. But boy, in hard financial times, I think about how many clinicians that could bring in, or how many pieces that could commission, or how many instruments that could buy. And it's really hard to make sure that we're lining our priorities appropriately. And not to criticize any program, every program has to make those decisions for themselves. But sometimes I do wish we would pull the reins in just a little bit on the marching band thing, because it's quite aggressive.
If I guess you had Bryan Christian, king of the world, how would you solve that problem, do you think?
Oh man, I don't think I would want to. I think that I would leave it to the individuals as it is now. For some communities, it's very, very important, and maybe they can afford it and they want to do that, and for others maybe it's not. But we have to be okay with not competing if that's the case, and that's fine with me. Like I said, this is an art form, and I'm not in music to win, and we preach that to our kids. And we're in music because of the way it makes us feel, and the way it makes our audiences feel, and it's just a great activity. And again, nobody wins, nobody beats anybody else like in a head-to-head competition, athletic competition or something like that. I think the closest sports thing would be golf, because you're playing against yourself. You're trying to put your skills, your best skills, happen all at the right time. And sometimes you have a great 4 rounds and win a tournament. Sometimes you have a great 3 rounds and then you blow it, as we saw this last weekend. Not to mention any names, but it's kind of crazy. I think we just need to keep our priorities in why are kids signing up for band? Why did we get into this? And let's make sure that music is an awesome activity, and kids are having fun, and they want to do it, and that we're not making it such a difficult thing that they leave. But I hate it when we put so much pressure on them, maybe, that they say, it would be a lot easier to do this. And that is true. I'm all for hard work and the things that it teaches. But I think we do need to be careful, on how much emphasis we put on the competition.
It's been an honor to get to talk to you today. It's been fantastic. Bryan Christian from Vista Ridge. Thanks for joining us on Beyond the Clef.
My pleasure, my privilege. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Beyond the Clef. For more great content, subscribe on our website at beyondtheclef.com. And be sure to follow us on YouTube, iTunes, SoundCloud, and Facebook.